Hello everybody, this is Tavri again. Today I'm going to show you how you can create simple tables with values and how you can visualize these values using charts. In order to do this, we can just open a new file. As you already know, we can do this when we click on the Excel button here on the taskbar. We are opening the Microsoft Office Excel application, and now we can create a new file as we previously did. Just click on the blank workbook, which results in opening a new file, which by default is called book 1. The first step that we have covered is just to firstly save the file under the name that we would like. In order to do this, you can click on the F12 button on your keyboard, and then you see that a save window is opening where we could just name the file before we saved it in a different name, which can be called lesson 3. And you see that this file is going to be saved in the same folder as the other two files that we created previously in our previous two lessons. In order to save the file under the extension XLSX, which is the standard one, you can click on the save button. Now, as you can remember, in the previous two steps we covered some of the main things, which is how to create a new file in Excel, how to save this file in or under different name, how we could examine the working environment, which is organized in electronic tables called spreadsheets. Knowing that the Excel file itself is called workbook, the working area is named workbook, so we can have more than one book in a file as long as we need it, so we can always go and create a new one. We also learned how all the functionalities are organized in different menus here on the top, and each menu has got different sections on the ribbon. Also very important is the formula bar, which is here, and each of the cells in this table has got an address. For example, the first cell here on the left upper corner, which is created as an intersection of line number 1 and column A, is called or is with address A1. Knowing this, and also knowing how we can easily do some calculation in Excel, either by hand or automatically using the so-called built-in functions, which are accessible from the formulas menu, insert function button, we learned how we could do a sum of more than one values. Then we also learned how to calculate an average value. And today on this lesson we are going to create a simple table and visualize the results of this table. Just to mention here, you can easily go from one cell into another using the arrow keys on your keyboard, which is quite easy. You can go and see. In this particular example, today we are going to take a look at an example which could be the following. Let's assume that we are in a production environment. There is a company which produces bikes, different models. What we would like to see, or for example, imagine that you have been given the task to create a chart illustrating the sales in terms of the numbers of the bikes that have been sold depending on their models, and then this chart should be provided to your manager for them to do a decision making. So what we got here is the following. We know firstly that we are going to show the values or the sales for a product, which is the bike. This could be the first column in your table. And the second column would be the quantities, the number of bikes that have been sold of each of the models that we have. So here we've got the quantity. Let's say that we've got 3 model of bikes: bike model 1, bike model 2, and bike model 3. And once again, if you remember, we could type, or we could select the first 2 cells, and if we continue with the left mouse button, we could reproduce the third bike, because Excel is doing for us auto numbering, as you can see, which is quite useful. By the way, you can also go here on the right bottom corner and increase the scale if you wish, if you don't see well. And then let's say that the company has sold, for example, 40 bikes of model 1, 140 bikes from model 2, and only 20 bikes from model 3. So you can see, then we created just the first table. We can organize the values and the names in this table. In order to do this, you can, after you have selected these 2 columns, you can double click when you see this sign. You can double click and Excel automatically will increase or decrease the column widths. Then after we have entered the product, the quantity that have been sold, which product we said that this is the bikes, 3 model of bikes. Quantity of these bikes have been sold, namely 40 bikes of model 1, 140 from model 2, and only 20 bikes of model 3. Now, before we visualize the results, we could calculate the total amount of bikes, or the total number of bikes that have been sold. In order to do this, we could use not only the manual approach, just writing down the equal sign and calculating the sum. You see, select the address of cell C4 plus the value in cell with address C5 plus the value of bikes that have been sold of model 3 into cell C6. As we mentioned last time, this is not probably the best approach, especially when we might have more than 3 number of lines that we need to use for the calculation. That is why we could use one of the functions that we discussed previously, which is called sum. So we can type equal sign. We know that the function name is sum. We can type it here. If we do not remember, we usually or always can go to the formulas menus and insert function menu, which will open that window that we used before. So for example, because I now can remember what the function name was, which is sum, I could open a bracket, select the values that I will need to include into this sum, which is namely the number of bikes of each model that have been sold, then close the bracket and press the enter button, which automatically calculates the total number of bikes which have been sold. And this is the last actually 5th line in our table, which is the total amount of bikes. In case let's say, or let's assume you haven't used this function before, you can do this after you have selected this cell. You can go and click on the formulas menu, then press the insert function button, and here from this list you can select the sum function. However, because there are many functions, you can narrow down the filter to mathematical functions, and then you can go and search the function by typing sum. click the Go button and Excel automatically shows you the list of functions, built-in function, which contains some in their names. I select the first one, click the OK button, and then automatically, sometimes intuitively, Excel knows which cells to select in order to calculate the total amount, which in this occasion is the range of cells from C4 to C6. We can do, of course, this manually, just clicking on this button and selecting the cells. Then we click on here and press the OK button, which results in the calculation of the total amount of bikes from different models which have been sold by the company. And from time to time, as I suggested, we can go just here and click the Save button to make sure that we keep our work. Now, what we have done, we entered in a table the product, which is 3 types of models of bikes, and the quantities, which is the number of bikes that have been sold from each of these 3 models. And eventually what we did, we calculated the total amount of bikes that have been sold. Now, before illustrating the results, we can go and format this table. In order to do this, you can select the cells, and then you can select the home menu and click on this button here into font section, click all borders, and now you got your first table, which we can name table 1 cells. Cells in terms of the number, not in terms of the money that have been calculated. And now, due to the fact that the last line is just a calculation of the total amount of bikes which have been sold, we can go and use formatting, pressing the bold button so that we can see what the total amount of money is actually. Now, you can also go and use different formattings, such as, for example, because this is total amount, you can go and just click here and you can choose a different color, let's say green, to highlight this value, not only using the bold but also a color if you wish. On the other hand, you can select the table name, you can format it using an italic font, bold, and smaller font size, let's say. And again, you can click on the save button. Now, what you can see is a table representing the sales of bikes, 3 models of bikes, and the total number of bikes that have been sold over the time, let's say a specific period of time, let's say a month or a week. Now, because we've got the numbers, we would like to see, or may like to see, 2 things. Either we would like to see how these sales are compared to each other, which is nicely done in the so-called bar charts, or we would like to show what is the share of model of bikes that have been sold. So we are going to create 2 simple charts. The first one is the so-called bar chart. In order to do this, we go and select the values that we are going to show from the table. Then we go and click on the insert button and go to the chart section, and from here you click on 2D, 2-dimensional columns, which results in opening of a simple bar chart showing what are the numbers of bikes that have been sold from each model. Of course, you can further go and format this chart. In order to do this, you can click on it with the right mouse button. Then you can go and select data from the drop-down menu, and you can do some formattings and other stuff. But what is interesting here is to show the values, because now we see that the first bar is close to 50, but it is not actually 50, it is 40. So in order to do this, we click with the left mouse button to select the bars, then we click the right mouse button and select Add Labels. When we click on Add Labels, what we see is actually the numbers of bikes that have been sold, which is now visually presented. However, it is also quite helpful after you save the file to go and further format this chart. In order to do this, you select the chart, and do you see here there is a plus sign? When you click it, or a button, you can see a drop down menu showing different options that can be selected, such as chart title. We haven't added yet axis title, so I'll put here or select axis title so that we now can go and write down bike model on the X axis, and let's say number of bikes, sold on the Y axis, so that now your manager or whoever is going to look at this chart knows that we have a bar chart showing the distribution, let's say, of the bikes from different models which have been sold over a particular period of time. The chart type or the title, we can name it here, sales of bikes, let's say. We can also do another additional formattings such as grids and other things which are not that important in this occasion. What we have now until this moment are two things: the table itself as well as the bar chart, which illustrates the number of bikes that have been sold by the company, by the production company, which is quite nice. But the last step or task which could be helpful to your manager is to show what is the share of each of these bikes in terms of the sales, because here we now see just the numbers of bikes, I mean the counts or the bikes that have been sold from each model. Now we would like to see what is the share of each of these models in terms of the total percentage of sales. In order to do this, very common and useful type chart is the so-called pie chart, which would nicely present the shares of sales of these bikes for each of the three models. In order to do this, you can go again, select the rows and columns of interest, then you can click on the insert menu and go here to the chart section, but this time you're not selecting bar chart, you're selecting pie chart here. And you can use the three-dimensional pie chart because it is, as you can see, nicely presenting the results in a 3D format. You can click on it, and now you got one more chart. I'll put it here just under the bar chart. I'll slightly decrease the scale. And now we are going to show the shares of sales by bike model. And now we see the so-called pie chart, which shows the share of each of the models of bikes that have been sold, but we don't see yet what is the number as well as the percentage. So in order to do this, you can click on the chart with the left mouse button, then you can click right mouse button and again go to add data labels, click on here, and on this example you can choose add the data callouts. And now you can see how nicely the bar chart is showing which piece of this pie chart is for which bike model that has been sold. Now we can see that actually the distribution of sales is such that we've got 70% of the sales for model of bikes, which is model 2. 20% of the sales are attributed to bike model 1, and only 10% of the sales are for bike of model 3. You can also go and show, in addition to the percentage, you can also show the absolute values, but due to the fact that we already showed these values in the above bar chart, in this occasion this is not needed. And now what you could do, just go and click on the save button. Now what you can see here is that we just created a table representing the products which have been sold, which were the bikes of the different models, model 1, 2 and 3, the number of bikes which have been sold from each model, which is represented in a tabular format in table 1, which is called sales, but again not showing the values in terms of the money, just the counts. Then we illustrated or visualized this data from the table 1, which is now illustrated on two separate charts. The bar chart showing the absolute values of the sales for each of the three models of bikes, as well as the so-called pie chart visualizing or representing the shares of sales for each of these three models of bikes, which as a result can be a useful tool for your manager to continue with some analysis and decisions that have been taken later on. So this is how we close this lesson. I would like to thank you for your attention, and before you go, you can just select the save button, click on it to save your work, close the workbook and click again the save button. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you next time.